welcome, Dr. Tomas Chamorro-Premuzic. It's nice to have you here with us. With your extensive experience and expertise in human capital development, talent management and leadership, and now also artificial intelligence, we are eager to explore with you some artificial intelligence related scenarios, both in terms of trends as of today and for the future.
It's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for accepting it. So I would start from your latest book, I, Human, where you explore the impacts that artificial intelligence is going to have, and it also already had, on our lives and habits, and focusing on the workplace especially. How do you think it is going to impact the workplace?
It's great to be here first, so thank you for the invitation. I would say, if we look at what AI is impacting thus far, because nobody really knows what comes next, there are three critical areas that my work has focused on highlighting. The first is obviously automation of predictable work. The fact that, in theory, it should be a privilege, a real resource to be able to outsource boring and repetitive stuff to a machine. There might be productivity increases that come from that, although we are yet to be, certain in which exact ways they will come and to what degree. The second one is, I think, the impact that this has on human skills, the fact that we are now focusing our own human development on the things that AI is less likely to emulate or replicate, things like empathy, kindness, consideration, even self-awareness. And the third is what happens when you combine both things, when you combine human and artificial intelligence. This idea that, we might be able to augment our own skills if we spend less time worrying about whether AI is smarter than us and more time worrying about how we can be smarter with AI.
So, how can artificial intelligence support leaders making more informed and strategic decisions?
When we think about how AI can be a tool for leaders, really, I think there's a couple of important avenues that reflect both the possibilities that exist today and what's probably coming in the very short term. What we see today is, of course, the opportunity for leaders to be more data-driven in their decision. I mean, leaders, managers, and employees really, but particularly if you're a leader and you have to synthesize large amounts of data, make predictions, forecasting, understand trends in the market and your own workforce, competition. Not so long ago, we were looking for leaders who were very data-driven and had some analytics tools. The idea being that they could, if not number crunch or make sense of the data, manage teams that translate that data into insights. Now that is done by AI, which is interesting because it shows that leaders will differentiate or provide added value, not so much with their IQ, but more through their EQ. It's more about connecting with people, empathizing, etc. That is now the key differentiator. And that takes me to the second kind of pathway, which is not here yet, but it's very, very near, which is this idea that we can also leverage AI to improve our emotional and social skills. Imagine if you're running a meeting, a virtual meeting, and you have 20, 30 employees scattered around the world, and you have an AI co-pilot assisting you and telling you how your team is feeling, whether they're engaged or not, that this employee hasn't spoken because they're bored, that this other employee is perhaps feeling burnt out, etc. Imagine an AI that also assists you in how you write emails to key stakeholders, to clients, to employees, that customizes the messages to basically make you more emotional intelligence. So the passage, I think, is quite logical in the sense that AI takes care of the IQ or well-defined problems that require a lot of data synthesizing. Leaders are then asked to step up and be better in terms of their social and emotional competence, and then AI comes and actually helps us fine-tune and finesse those skills.
So, given that AI could support leaders, could also AI support us at better selecting such leaders?
This is a great question, and in fact, we should almost start by that second part, right? Well, for starters, the worse we are at picking the right leaders, the less AI can help to make them better later on. And as you know, my initial kind of entry point with AI or to AI has been a continuation of how science-based assessments and data can improve an area which is still very serendipitous, very irrational, and very focused on style rather than substance, which is leader selection. So I'm a big believer in the value that AI brings when it comes to scaling psychometric assessment tools like personality assessments by making them shorter, more enjoyable, more linked to the outputs that you want to predict. And ultimately, the more organizations habituate to this idea that AI is fundamentally a tool that can help them translate data into insights and improve predictive accuracy, the more likely it is that they understand that AI can be a tool that improves meritocracy, that reduces politics and nepotism in leadership selection. And of course, if we do that, then everything else is easier, including creating the right cultural transformations to adopt and embrace AI. So I would even say that we have this almost paradoxical relationship between, on the one hand, still many people are a little bit intimidated or scared by this idea that algorithms could make better leader selection or leader decisions than themselves. But on the other hand, those same people and everybody else can see how suboptimal and often catastrophic our leadership choices are. In fact, I'm sure people wouldn't be shocked to hear, for example, that if you replace average voters with algorithms, we would select better heads of states and better leaders in most elections. This isn't a political statement, it's just a statement of fact, because more often than not, there are too many factors that predict whether people get selected for leadership, and these factors are not just unrelated to the leadership talent, but often diametrically opposed. So I think I welcome well-designed and ethically regulated AI that can help us identify the signals that are truly indicative of leadership potential and talent, while actually ignoring things like gender, race, social class, which still determine people's success level.
The future of work will be increasingly more hybrid and fluid. So what are these scenarios, pros and cons, opportunities and challenges that may come in the future?
So let me start with the challenges, which is that today most organizations still haven't worked out how to actually quantify in objective terms the value that people bring to their teams and organizations. And if you cannot really objectively measure output, performance, value added, it's very hard to make things like hybrid or flexibility work, right? The main reason why a lot of bosses still want employees to come to the office is because they're not measuring output, they're measuring input. So they want to see if people look busy when they walk, besides them, which actually, ironically, forces people to pretend they're busy as opposed to actually doing their work. So that is a big challenge. It will not be solved by AI, it will be solved by competent HR processes and managers who actually want to reduce noise, politics, and nepotism to actually quantify value. I think a second challenge is that we have seen already data for Italy, for Europe, for most of the world really, not just the rich world, that even though people love being able to work from anywhere, especially young people love freedom and flexibility, actually, if people don't have an opportunity to interact with others in person, you dilute the culture a little bit and you increase, the sense of loneliness that people actually experience from work. And as much as you might have some gains in productivity because people aren't distracting you or you can do your work where it suits you most, you don't get that sense of connectedness that actually makes work more than work for most people. Those are, I think, the two challenges or risks. I think the main opportunities is, of course, that we're already living in a world that is fluid and flexible in every single possible sense. We're already living in a world where should be trusted to deliver value and work in the ways that they find most fulfilling and most productive. So I think, all the evidence has been there for a while. If you micromanage people and force them into the office without a good reason, morale goes down and they won't want to work for you. Talent also has no boundaries. The ability to be able to hire and develop people who are scattered around the globe or not constrained by proximity is also very important, since we're living in an age of talent scarcity still, and most organizations complain about finding the talent that they need, not being able to find the talent that they need. And I think finally, ultimately, the great opportunity will be to free up some time. Productivity is not just about total output, it's really about output divided by input. And if it is true that technology will bring these productivity gains, we should allow for people to work less if that is what they want. Since the wellness and well-being industry is booming and very much trying to optimize cultures and work for that, I think that's something that a lot of people look forward to, working smart rather than hard.
What are your main concerns and hopes regarding integrating artificial intelligence both in our personal and professional life?
So I guess the main concern is that we don't integrate it, that there's still this polarization that pushes people towards two irrational, I would say, tribal extremes. The camp that expects everything good to happen, that AI is going to make us fitter, happier, more productive, as per the old Radiohead song, and the other camp that basically fears it and almost disincentivizes people from trying it and experimenting. And so I think, the big fear is that it's there and it's either feared or embedded in irrational hopes and optimism. I would say after that we can go into some of the more specific issues. Of course, on a very tactical level, for organizations to really leverage this and any other technology, they need to work out what the right cultural processes and mindset would be. Change is very difficult, and change at scale is almost always very, very difficult. So I would say I fear, the lack of positive and effective leadership that helps organizations leverage this. On the individual level, I think it's the first time really that most people are almost praying for regulation to advance fast enough. Because if there's one thing that history tells us is that people are not very good at self-regulating. And of course, misuses or problematic uses of AI, especially with vulnerable populations, need to be properly regulated and legislate for and against and towards. Somebody asked me recently whether this sort of almost unprecedented amount of regulation is because AI is smarter than us or dumber than us. And the answer is very clear. We don't have to fear whether AI is smart or dumb, ethical or unethical, but unethical and dumb humans is what we're regulating against. So I think those would be some of the main risks. At the end of the day, the most likely scenario still is that this will continue to see very high and strong levels of adoption, and the organic experimentation and organic sort of uses and benefits that people extract will determine how far this takes us and how fast this can take us there.
So what role does personality assessment play at enhancing organizational effectiveness?
Well, particularly if we think about personality assessment in leadership, selection and development, so if you think about organizational effectiveness and change top-down, being driven by the leaders or from the leadership levels, there are three important roles that scientifically designed and validated personality assessments play. The first is, of course, that personality is the best predictor of human behavior, including leadership behaviors. So if you want to make a decision vis-a-vis selecting or appointing somebody in a leadership role is your best predictive model of how a person will behave, how they will lead, how they will manage a team, how they will connect with others, etc. And often people think that this is about finding the only formula or right algorithm or combination that works. No, not at all. It's about matching the person to the role or context, which doesn't mean that you want somebody who is exactly the person you want to fit in that team organizations. You actually probably want a moderate misfit, somebody who will be a good enough fit to work within the culture, but a bad enough fit to want to drive change, which is what leaders should do. The second role is in enabling what we call self-awareness, which is helping leaders understand themselves and how they impact on other people. And typically, not just leaders, but human beings are not very good at this. So most of the times when leaders get presented with well-designed feedback on their potential, their performance, their behaviors, this is almost like an objective, data-driven, third-party perspective on what they're like. It's like holding up a mirror in front of them and telling them, this is what you're like. And the third one is an extension of the second one, assuming that they don't like the picture they see in the mirror because they thought they should look younger, prettier, thinner, or whatever. Personality assessments provide them with a baseline to guide their development and change, right? I would say all leadership development is an attempt to go against your nature, against your personality. It's an attempt to basically close the gap between who you are and who you want to be. And you can only do that really if, again, you have a baseline and you present people with an accurate picture of who they are to begin with. So again, matching people to the right role based on who they are and what they're likely to do, helping them understand how they lead and who they are, and then helping them change in a direction that improves their effectiveness and the organizational effectiveness.
So what innovations do you think artificial intelligence could bring to the realm of reskilling and upskilling?
So I think AI will help us diagnose more precisely and almost on an individual or granular level the gaps that people have. And if you look at AI as a tool that can predict the trajectory of skills and the longevity of roles and occupations, it's really used already to basically identify career pathing, especially around reskilling and upskilling of individuals across industries and professions. Now with that, I think the biggest challenge and the biggest imperative is not so much for AI or technology, but for organizations and leaders. Because if you think about it, AI is no different from any other technology. Technology is always about doing more with less, and never in the history of human evolution has any technology been invented to work harder or to work more. It's always about doing less. And what we're seeing with AI right now is that, there's the people, of course, who are neglecting it and fearing it and, disinterested, the people that we should really worry about, and the people who are actually adopting it and using it, but not telling their bosses, not telling their managers that they're using. So they're using it in a kind of clandestine way because they might be saving 30 or 40% of their time on task or on the role thanks to AI, generative AI or other versions of AI, but they don't want their boss to come and say, okay, now I have this new pile of work for you. And by the way, the boss doesn't want to have to think about what new work to create. So the reskilling and upskilling imperative is not so much so that people can use AI. It's more about incentivizing them to reimagine their current role in the way that they will add value in the future. Because what we've seen so far is that AI hasn't really eliminated that many jobs as it has eliminated tasks within jobs, changing the skills constellation needed to perform those same jobs and roles. So I think reskilling and upskilling is probably the number one challenge for managers and leaders, full stop, period. But it's fundamentally about bringing people along and creating the incentives for them to unleash their curiosity and their desire to learn, and helping them understand that it's for their good, not so much so that they resist automation, but fundamentally so that they can reimagine their jobs in a more interesting and fulfilling way.
So thank you, Dr. Tomas Chamorro-Premuzic, for sharing with us these invaluable and interesting insights about these scenarios. Thank you for your time and for your expertise.
Thank you for the invitation. Again, great pleasure.